Alright, I am back with another video, and when patch 8 released, we got a ton of unique and interesting subclasses added to the game, ranging from fan favourites that are quite powerful, like Bladesinger Wizard and Hexblade Warlock, to ones that got some middling reception, like, say, Drunken Master Monk. However, the subclass that we're going to be looking at today is widely considered to be the worst out of the bunch, and that is the College of Glamour. The College of Glamour's whole thing is giving your allies, or even yourself, a little bit of extra temporary HP, and has the ability to easily charm enemies, effectively stopping like chain attacks, if you will, so things like multi-attack and such like that, while giving yourselves a little bit more survivability. Unfortunately, that doesn't really do a lot, especially towards the end game. However, I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could make an interesting multi-class build using College of Glamour, as I've only ever really touched it once. So, the only issue with that is that College of Glamour does have a little bit of trouble multiclassing, since its main ability you get at level 3 scales with your bard level, so it kind of likes to say single class level, kind of like Beastmaster Ranger. However, I think I found something that has a bit of fun theme and can make for an interesting support build, so let's see how it goes. Let's get into the build. Your racial option for this build doesn't really matter. I've decided to play as Azariel Tiefling just because we're not going to be able to take a cleric dip in this build, and being able to get Thaumaturgy on a bard is just always really nice to have, so I just think it's going to be a fun addition to the build, but really, you can pick anything. Now, we are going to be starting off as a bard today. This is just going to be because we get the most skill proficiencies if we do so this way, and since we're going to be a high charisma character, we're definitely going to want to have that right off the bat. We're going to get access to bardic inspiration and some spells and some cantrips with this. Speaking of cantrips, we've got access to our usual bard selection here. Now, obviously, most people are going to want to start with Vicious Mockery, but I would actually say, depending on how you build this, maybe you'll build it like I have. You might actually want to train out Vicious Mockery a bit later, but definitely start with it, but you're probably going to want to respec and get rid of it later if you go down the route that I'm going to suggest you go down, but definitely keep it at the start. As for your other one, just pick Mage Hand. I think it's a very good spell just to have for utility reasons, so I like to have that one around. Moving on, we do get to choose our 4 starting spells for the build, and of course we're going to go with the kind of Fey-themed ones, because for those of you who don't know, College of Glamour is actually Fey-inspired. You are taught under the tutelage of Fey in order to be able to charm people. That is the whole point. So this is going to be a kind of a Fey-inspired build, which means we're going to go for Fairy Fire, Dissonant Whispers, Sleep, and Tashas. A good mix of damage, control, and support. Basically, a solid bard kit. For your starting instrument, pick whatever you like. I've gone with the Lyre. And for the background, now, I would actually change this, as since I did my testing and I initially made this character, I have made some slight adjustments to the build. You can still keep Charlatan if you want to basically not have to take a half feat later on in the build, if you just want to go for pure stats. That's absolutely fine if you want to make slightly more well-rounded character. However, I would change your background to something that doesn't have deception if you follow this guide, because we are going to be taking the actor feat later on. So really, it's up to you how you want to go about that. I would personally recommend something like the Urchin background. I initially picked Charlatan because of the way you get inspiration. Feels like something a Fey kind of inspired character would do, but honestly, you're probably just going to want to pick it for whatever skill proficiencies you can get your hands on, and Urchin does feel like the best, so that's probably what I would go with here, but you can also just kind of pick whatever you like. It really doesn't matter. Now, as for the stat spread, I'm going to be changing this a little bit from when I was doing my testing, because I did think adding in the actor feat later was going to make the build slightly better. So, strength is at 8 because we don't need it. Dexterity is there for our AC and potentially our weapon attack if we decide to make one. Constitution is at 14 because we're meant to be a backlining support build. We're not really up in the faces of our enemies, so hopefully rounding out to a solid 80 to 90 HP by the end of this build should be fine. Intelligence is at 8 because we don't need it. Wisdom is at 10 just while wisdom saves aren't completely impossible to make. And charisma is at 17 because again, we're going to be bumping this up with actor later. For our skill proficiencies, obviously if we're grabbing actor, you want to make sure you don't have deception or performance, so obviously like I said, change that background, but otherwise you can kind of pick whatever you like here. I'm going to have, basically, if I was to go with Urchin, I would have Stealth and Sleight of Hand here, and then you'd be able to pick Intimidation, Persuasion, and then just one more skill of your choice from the list, leaving Deception and Performance for a bit later. Alright, that's level 1. Right away at level 2, I want to take a quick multi-class dip into Warlock. Yeah, a lot of you probably saw this coming. For a Fey-themed build, it makes sense that we get a little bit of Archfey action here, but it is just going to give us another solid addition to our kit, which I think is going to be quite fun. So, let's talk about our cantrips to start. Obviously, we want Eldritch Blast. Normally, I try to avoid taking Eldritch Blast where I can, for builds that don't really need it, but I'll be honest, this build is going to want a consistent, safe damage option, because again, we're a backline support character. Just having Eldritch Blast being our bread and butter for consistent damage is actually going to feel pretty damn nice as you go throughout the game. It's going to scale well with our level, even if we go back to the Bard levels, because we get the additional beam. So honestly, as much as it pains me, Eldritch Blast is going to be your kind of main option for damage if you need a damage option in a turn. As for your other option, it's entirely up to you kind of what you want to pick here. Friends is an obvious choice, I would say, just for the theme of the build, so you can take that here. Our Archfey subclass will give us access to 2 spells that we already get from Bard, so we don't really need to worry about that, unless you would rather take them here, other than a Warlock option, entirely up to you. But here we get Fey Presence. This allows us to, once per short rest, choose to either charm or frighten enemies that with our beguiling magic. This is in an area around us and it's a wisdom saving throw, but this can technically allow you to charm multiple enemies at once if they get too close, which can be really good as an escape tool. And this version of charm lasts for 2 turns, where we'll see a bit later the College of Glamour's version only lasts for 1. So it is a little bit of extra kind of destabilizing among the enemy, bit of a decent debuff. You can use frighten, but we're going to be more focused on charm here today. That's kind of the theme. Speaking of charm, we can grab Charm Person here as well. Mainly because there's not really too many other things I would take here that fit the theme, so I quite like grabbing Charm Person here just for the theming, but it's probably made a little bit redundant by some of our other options. Entirely up to you if you want to swap that out. I'm also going to grab Hex, just because it's a nice concentrate and forget it spell if you've got nothing else that you want to concentrate on. Getting that extra bit in necrotic damage and giving disadvantage on ability checks is kind of nice. We're going to go back over to Bard, because I do actually want to get the Bard stuff first, so that we can start building up to College of Glamour. This means we're going to get at level 2, Jack of all Trades and Song of Rest, which always synergizes nicely with Warlock anyway, because now we have 3 short rests, which will keep our Warlock abilities going a lot longer. We're also going to get to choose another spell at this point, and of course I always love to grab Speak with Animals, because it just gives us more dialogue options throughout the game. We get Searing Smite if you are a Zariel Tiefling, so have fun with that, although we're probably not going to use it too much. At Bard level 3, we get to choose our subclass, but we also do get to choose a level 2 spell. And I think we can either go with Hold Person or Crown of Madness here. I think both work well and fit the build quite nicely. I'll probably start with Crown of Madness. So, College of Glamour. You have mastered your craft under the tutelage of Fey creatures, whose captivating magic swells within you, ready to be released. So yeah, overall, it is a Fey-themed subclass, which is why I kind of wanted to lean into that angle. Obviously, though, we get Mantle of Inspiration. You imbue 2 allies with your Vigor, and grant them 5 temporary hit points. If they are hit with a melee attack, the attacker will become charged. This costs a bonus action and a usage of your Bardic Inspiration. By the time this build is done, that will scale up to 3 allies, and those allies can include yourself, as well as 8 temporary hit points, which you can imagine, again, into the end game is not a lot, especially when you're up against things like Steel Watchers that can't even be charmed in the first place and can do upwards of stupid damage. So this is why people immediately looked at College of Glamour and said, wow, that's underwhelming. I actually think it's pretty damn decent in the early to mid game, but I do think it falls off a little bit in the end game, especially when you look at some of the later abilities of College of Glamour and you just kind of think, why? Again, we'll get to that in a minute, but Mantle Inspiration, it's not terrible, but it's also not great. It's not Blade Song or anything like that, or Hexblade's Curse. Like, you see the other things that were added in this game, and you just think, yeah, no, this is not the most powerful. But then you also have to look at how Bard had 2, maybe even 3 of some of the most powerful subclasses in the game, so yeah, we can't really fault them too much for adding something with a bit of a lower power scale, just to bump up some of the other classes. Bard was already, like, the strongest class in this game, or at least one of them, so, you know, College of Glamour gets a bit of a pass, at least from me. You do get to choose a couple of skill proficiency, expertise here. I would personally go with Persuasion, and I quite like Stealth here as well, and I'll explain more about that a bit later. At Bard level 4, you're going to gain access to another cantrip. I would probably pick Minor Illusion. We also do get to choose another level 2 spell of our choice, and Hold Person is quite nice, but I might also grab Invisibility a bit later. Again, I'll explain why. We get Branding Smite if you are a Zariel Tiefling. Again, probably not going to use that too much. And we also get our first feat of the build, which of course is going to go into the active feat. giving us expertise in deception and performance, as well as a +1 to our charisma. At Bard level 5, you're going to get Font of Inspiration, allowing our Bardic Inspiration to recover on a long or short rest, as well as improved Bardic Inspiration. Now it is bumped up to a D8. We also do get to choose another spell of our choice up to level 3, but honestly, I am going to dip back down to level 2 and grab that invisibility. And I would say at this point, if you feel like you're not using one of your bard spells very much, I would definitely say Sleep has probably fallen off a bit at this point. You can swap that out for something else, in which case I might grab something like Hypnotic Pattern or Fear, maybe even Plant Growth. That definitely fits the kind of vibe, I think, of Fae, in my opinion. So really, it's entirely up to you. I don't really know what I would take out of these three. I think they're all quite good. Fear is an interesting one, but I think Hypnotic Pattern fits the build a bit more, so we're going to go with that. And then finally, for Bard level 6, you're going to get access to a couple of things. Namely, you're going to get Counter Charm, as well as our level 6 ability for College of Glamour, which is Mantle of Majesty Command. You can command a creature to flee, move closer, freeze, drop to the ground, or drop its weapon. So it's the command spell. Very nice. Okay, command is a very powerful spell. We do like it. It's not on the Bard spell list in 2014, so we don't get it anyway. So, you know, that's cool. Targets that are charmed automatically fail their saving throw, so you have a 100% success rate if the enemy is charmed, which we can do fairly consistently between our Warlock and Bardic abilities. And it lasts for 10 turns. Which is, you can so basically, while concentrating on Mantle of Majesty, you can cast it up to 10 times, which is really, really good, actually. It gives it a bit of sustainability. The issue I have with it, though, is it's once per long rest. Why? Why is it only once per long rest that we can do this? Is it because it lasts 10 turns? Okay, maybe. But still, this is actually one of the most important control aspects of College of Glamour's kit, being able to manipulate and, you know, influence people's actions by charming them. But the fact that we only get the major benefit from this once per long rest is just really, really disappointing. And I think that's why one of the reasons that a lot of people have issues with this subclass. Don't get me wrong, the encounter in which you use this, it's going to be amazing. You'll be able to have serious battlefield control, but that once per long rest limitation really hurts. However, I still think it's fairly decent if you can get it off consistently. You also do get to choose one more spell of your choice, so really, it's up to you what you want to grab here. I would say Fear. Let's just go with Fear. Now, for the rest of this build, we're going to hop back over to Warlock. Really, if you felt like you were happy at Bard level 5, you could have just gone back to Warlock. You didn't really need the level 6 if you don't right away, if you don't care about Mantle of Majesty, but I do, because this is meant to be a College of Glamour build, but you can play around with the leveling scheme if you like. So, at level 2 of Warlock, we're going to gain access to another spell, and I actually quite like the idea of taking Hellish Rebuke here, because there's, like, you get those fey creatures who are, like, mirthful, tricksy, or fuming, and I really like the idea of it kind of mixing with our tiefling thing a little bit here, where if we get hit, we suddenly explode with, like, a fiery rage. It's just, like, the temperament of the fey, which I think is kind of fun. We also do get to choose Eldritch Invocations at this level, and I'm definitely going to recommend Agonizing Blast. Again, Eldritch Blast is our bread and butter for consistent damage over our turns, so Agonizing Blast is going to help with that. As for your other choice, honestly, it's really up to you. I would probably take Repelling Blast, actually, just because we are a support build and we do want to keep our foes away from us if we can. We want to play at the mid to long range, and Repelling Blast can help with that. But otherwise, Mask of Many Faces very much fits the build for Disguise Self. One with Shadows for the invisibility also kind of fits. Fee for 5 Fates for Bane could also be kind of nice. So really, it's entirely up to you. Devil's Sight, honestly, this is a pick your favorite, but I feel like the standard blast combo works pretty well here. At Warlock level 3, you're going to gain access to another level 2 spell of your choice, and I'm going to be grabbing Misty Step here because it got added to our spell list thanks to Fengy Boober, the subclass. Oh my goodness, my brain does not want to work today. We're also going to get our Pact Boon at this level. Now, you could go with Pact of the Blade if you want to go for a typical Spellblade thing, but I really like our mid to range support. Technically, Pact of the Chain has a place on this build. As you can give your Mantle of Inspiration to your allied familiar, you could give them a little bit more longevity, as well as having a tricksy little invisible quasit running around could actually be pretty damn fun, but at that point, just get Shovel. So really, Pact of the Chain could have a place here, but once again, I think it's going to be left in the dust. for Pact of the Tome. You're going to gain access to Guidance, which is great on a Bard, Vicious Mockery, which we would get as a Bard, but you can train that out now if you want to, and Thorn Whip, which is just a fun extra bonus, but really, we're going to get some other really good spells from this a bit later on. At Warlock level 4, we're going to get to choose our cantrip. Now, we kind of have everything that I would want for this build, but in the off chance that you do have to make a weapon attack, perhaps someone just got a bit too close, or you want to trigger the passive ability of the weapon that I have chosen, then yeah, Booming Blade is the way to go. Moving on, we do get to choose another level 2 spell of our choice here. And I really like Mirror Image. I think it's great. It gives us a bit of an AC bump. And since we're going to be playing at the mid to long range, and again, shouldn't really be the focus of our enemy's ire if we play right, Mirror Image will actually last a pretty long time for us if we're not constantly taking attacks. So I think it's a good pick. Now, we also do get to choose a feat for this build, and I actually do think the best thing we can do here is take an ability score improvement and bump up our charisma to 20, but really, you can take pretty much anything you like here. We don't need our charisma at 20, but because I want our charm effects to be as consistent as possible, I want as high of a spell save DC as possible, so we're going to have a very high charisma on this build. At Warlock level 5, we're going to get our Deepened Pact feature, which is going to mean that we're going to get 3 spells from Pact of the Tome: Animate Dead, Haste, and Cool Lightning. If you went Pact of the Blade, you get extra attack at this level, but again, this isn't really a Pact of the Blade build. Animate Dead, pretty nice, technically another thing that we can mantle. Haste, amazing, great support spell, could concentrate on that and just let our barbarian go nuts. And Cool Lightning is just a decent damage spell if you want to use it. Now, we also do get to pick a level 3 spell from the Warlock spell list. Really, entirely up to you what you want to take here. I think we've got most of the things that make us good. Blink feels very much in line with the Fae. Counterspell is a great support spell. Plant Growth also is a great debilitating spell, but we'll actually get a version of that a bit later. Gaseous Form, Flight, really pick your favorites once again. I like the idea of having Blink. I think it's a fun spell to have. I think it just makes sense, like it just plays into the idea if you're a tricksy Fae that can go invisible, teleport around, blink in and out. It just feels fun. Mind you, be careful. When you blink into the ethereal plane, you will lose concentration on any effects that you have concentration on. So really, this is only a I'm at low HP and just need to survive kind of thing. It's an emergency button you press in a dire situation. We're also going to grab Maya the Mind here as our Eldritch Invocation to get slow, another great support option, allowing us to really debilitate large groups of enemies if they fail for DC, which again, with our 20 in Charisma, they hopefully will. And finally, at Warlock level 6, we're going to get our Misty Escape feature from Archfey. Upon taking damage, you immediately become invisible, and on your next turn, you can cast Misty Step, though this will break your invisibility. So again, go invisible and teleport away. Feels very, very fun. Now, we have a few things that allow us to turn invisible, like the invisibility spell, as well as this, which is why I like the idea of having stealth, because not only can we be a sneaky, tricksy bard, we can also be invisible for a bit longer if we want to, if we really need to get out of a sticky situation. And I think for our final spell, we will take Counterspell, just because I think it will be a helpful option just in case we really need to try and shut down a powerful spell from our opponent. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty decent support build. Again, Mantle of Majesty being limited to only once per long rest does hurt, but Mantle of Inspiration is going to be pretty decent. Again, 3 allies with 8 temporary hit points, guaranteed charm effects. Yeah, there's no saving throw on that, by the way. They just become charmed if they get hit with a melee attack, which is great. If the enemy can be charmed, they will be charmed. Again, we've got Beguiling Presence. Again, that recovers on a short rest, which is nice. We're going to have a lot of those. And again, we're going to be kind of hard to hit. Mirror Image, you know, we play at like, ranged attacks might have a chance against us, but again, Mirror Image kind of helps with that. We've got all the great support spells. We've got a bunch of debilitating effects. You will have a decent chunk of battlefield control and maneuverability. We're able to Misty Step pretty consistently through multiple different ways. We're just going to have a lot of options for damage. And again, we're a bard. We are short resting 3 times a day. We are passing every skill check. We've even got Speak with Animals. So the thing is, you're doing everything that a bard does. You're just not doing as much of the extra stuff that a subclass will give you. You're still a good class. You're still a good build. You're a bardlock, which is always going to be good at the end of the day. It's just perhaps this subclass maybe doesn't do as much for people as some others may feel like they do. Which, I can understand that. But that doesn't necessarily mean College of Glamour is bad. It's just not as consistent, perhaps, is the best way of putting it. But either way, we've got a pretty solid selection of spells and abilities here, so let's take a look at the equipment. Now, For our weapon, I've gone with the Baneful. Now, like I said, you don't really need a melee weapon on this build, but I think if you want to go down the Pact of the Blade route, this is a cool one to have, so I just kind of wanted to point it out, but I did end up in my testing going for Pact of the Tome anyway, just because I felt like I liked having haste and such a bit more. But if you go down the Pact of the Blade route, you can activate the Baneful, which is going to give you a total of a +2 weapon, which is really nice, and you're also going to be able to possibly inflict Bane on a hit when you hit your target, giving them a D4 penalty to attack rolls and saving throws, which can help with our charm effects and such like that. So overall, it's a decent option if you decide you want to go the Pact of the Blade route, but honestly, it's not necessary. The main weapon I like having on this build is the Never Misser, which is just a pure force damage crossbow, which will be a really good option for attacking at range. So that's probably what I would mainly be using, but if you decide to go the Pact of the Blade route, you can use the Baneful. Moving on to our equipment. Now, for my hat, I've gone for Birthright. Again, I didn't really think there was many things that fit this build, and going for Birthright gives us a total of 22 Charisma. So overall, I just feel like this works pretty goddamn well for us. So with that, I feel like you can, and I guess this would allow you to take an extra feat and still have 20 charisma if you wanted to, but obviously the Birthright giving us a total of 22 is really, really nice for our spell save DC, and just gives us a really high chance of beating those charisma checks. And again, there wasn't really anything else that fit. In the other game though, you can grab the Cap of Curing, which will give you a bit of healing whenever you give someone Bardic Inspiration. They will also regain a bit of hit points, which is nice. Unfortunately, I don't believe this works on Mantle of Majesty. I actually did forget, Mantle of Inspiration. I actually think I forgot to check that, so I think it's technically a different thing between Bardic Inspiration and Mantle. Otherwise, this could be a decent little pick-me-up option, giving a bit of healing and temporary HP, but unfortunately, I don't think that's how it works. I should have tested that. I apologize, I forgot to. We go for the Nymph Cloak here as well, just for our cloak, because we just wanted to fill the slot. Gives us Dominate Person, another great Fey-inspired spell. For your endgame armor, though, the Armour of Landfall. Now, normally this is used on druids, but honestly, I think this just fits the build really, really well. It's going to give us a +1 to our spell save DC, a base of 13 armor class, which is nice. Again, that helps with everything that we want to do. Whenever you start your turn on a plant growth or vine surface, you regain a bit of hit points, so you can set up the plant growth that this actually gives you. I believe it's once per short rest as well, so it's effectively another Warlock spell for us, which is really nice. So it gives you a bit of healing and can really debilitate your enemies, which is great if you set up a choke point and you're able to support your allies from behind the plant growth, and your enemies can't really get to you because their movement is quartered. And you also gain advantage on con saving throw checks, which is very, very nice for all of our save or suck effects that we have to maintain concentration on. Haste, slow, fear, all that sort of thing. We want to make sure that those are going to be staying up, and the Armour of Landfall is really going to help with that. But in the other game, though, you can grab the Blazer of Benevolence. It's basically just packed in with the Cap of Curing, which allows you to, whenever you inspire an ally using Bardic, they also gain temporary hit points. So it gets you a version of Mantle of Inspiration before you would even get Mantle of Inspiration. So that's kind of nice. Moving on, the Wondrous Gloves. Your armor class will increase by 1, giving us a total of 17, which is not the best, but again, if we play this build right, it shouldn't really matter. In addition, you get an extra usage of Bardic, so now we have 5, which I just like. These will get obtainable in the early game, and they're just perfect for us. And there wasn't really any boots that fit the build, so we've just gone with the Disintegrating Nightwalkers to give us a bit of extra freedom of movement, as well as more Misty Steps. Speaking of Misty Step, we are going to be taking the Amulet of Misty Step, because again, wasn't too many things that fit the build really, and again, just having as many teleports as possible without having to use our spell slots is really, really nice. And again, these both recover on a short rest, which is awesome, so you're just going to be teleporting all the time. Now, we have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel here. Again, this is from when I was testing it as a Pact of the Blade build, but honestly, if you don't go with Pact of the Blade, like I, again, went for Pact of the Tome at the end, you can swap this out. But after hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast an illusion or enchantment spell as a bonus action. It just gives you a bit more to do if you want to go the more Spellbladey route, but honestly, if you're not playing Pact of the Blade, swap this out for something else. And then finally, Ring of Mental Inhibition. Again, I've been using this one quite a lot, but I actually think it works really, really nicely. When a foe fails a saving throw against one of your spells or actions, they'll gain Mental Fatigue, which lowers their mental saving throws, which means that you'll be more likely to get those effects off on them subsequently, or they won't be able to pass the saves if they get to make the save every turn. So it really, really does just make everything that we do just a little bit more effective. But yeah, that is the build. And is it my strongest? No. It really, really isn't. And unfortunately, it is brought down by the College of Glamour subclass. Don't get me wrong, it has potential, it has control options, and it can be really, really nice. But I think everyone and their mother would agree with me that if this was a Pact of the Blade Swords Bard build, we'd be singing a very different tune. But I don't know, I really wanted to try building with College of Glamour. I just wanted to do something different. And again, I've never really touched the subclass more than when it initially came out, so I just really wanted to take a look at it. And to be honest, no, it's not my favorite. But I do think it has potential if played right. Now, I will also say that normally I test these builds solo. You will see in the combat footage that I have Karlach with me, because again, I did some solo testing, and the build does struggle a bit solo. You really do want to play this as a support build, but once you actually have someone who can take hits and aggro for you, and you can just keep them up and keep them supported and, you know, apply the debuffs where you can, the build actually does have a pretty nice flow to it. Again, it's just the subclass is not doing as much for you as, say, swords or law, right? Like, law does quite a bit. And this one, not so much, but I do think it still has potential. I think I might have to do, like, maybe, like, in the future, like, do, like, a party of, like, what people would consider the quote-unquote worst subclasses, and just see if we can make, like, an interesting party that can actually play well, you know what I mean? It could be fun. But we'll see. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for me. Not much else to say here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.